Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Amazing Adventures 27 and 28, and this begins our scholarly examination of Don McGregor's and P. Craig Russell's Killraven. The feature was called War of the Worlds for the first, 12 to 15 issues, and then obviously Killraven was the star. So the title, I think next issue, it becomes Amazing Adventures featuring Killraven. The feature started in Amazing Adventures number 18, and it was created by a bunch of diverse hands. The writers seemed to switch every few issues. Artists were it was a revolving door. But around the early 20s of this title, Don McGregor took over and made it his own. A very young Don McGregor, just starting out. But already he had his literary style, if you will, even at a young age. This comic, like I said, is started at 18. I don't have the earlier issues, so this is not going to be complete. I basically had them when I was a youngster, and there's so much crappy art in a lot of them. There are some good issues here and there, like Gene Colan does one, Rich Buckler and Klaus Janson. But the stuff that I really like is P. Craig Russell. And Don McGregor's writing is pretty damn good. Part of me almost wishes I had those issues still, but I gave him many chances. I always weed my collection ever since I was a youngster. Every few years I go through stuff and say, do I really need this in my academy, if you will? And eventually, a long time ago, I realized the art is so crappy in most of these, I don't want to read them ever again, even though Don McGregor's writing is a notch above, maybe a few notches above your average writer back then. In some ways, he was a really good writer, but then he has this tendency to do really annoying stuff, sometimes that takes him down a few pegs. But still, at the time, the most interesting writer in comics, him and Steve Gerber. Nobody was doing anything like it. So let's start off with number 27 here. These are from 1974, by the way. Look at this Jim Starlin cover. That is so Jim Starlin. This should be on his gravestone. That just sums up Jim Starlin. Also love the costume. It's so early 70s. This costume would never exist before 1970 or after 1975. It's just nuts. So the title is based on the novel by H.G. Wells, War of the Worlds. But the comic, right from the first issue, number 18, it's really about Killraven. It's loosely based on War of the Worlds, just takes the concept and then totally adds this whole other layer. And I gotta say, it's a good layer. It's a pretty interesting sci-fi world in this comic. Definitely more mature than your average goofy comic. There's lots of complexities to the characters. So we have, this is the first P. Craig Russell issue. It's called The Death Breeders. And written by Don McGregor, artist Craig Russell, as I've previously said. But guys, this is where things go awry. Jack Abel inker. And we're going to see Jack Abel fucking ruins P. Craig Russell's pencils. This issue, I kept it just because it's the start of kind of a little story arc. But it doesn't even look like P. Craig Russell. It's pretty terrible. They did get the best colorist in comics at the time, Petra Goldberg, to draw it. Color it. And it looks pretty nice, but, the colors do. So basically, the War of the Worlds, the concept is that the Martians from War of the Worlds came back 100 years later in 2001, and they got over their weakness to the human cold virus. So they're immune now. But that was the only thing that defeated them in the novel. So now they take over Earth in 2001. Humans are basically like cattle and slaves. They've demolished human civilization, and they're totally in charge. But it has this post-apocalyptic feel to it, because civilization's gone. But it's more of a invasion story. And Killraven has this bunch of freemen, he calls them, the freemen. And they're a small band that are fighting the Martians. Most people have just given in. So it's 2019 here. Lake Michigan. Killraven and his freemen are on this kind of ice craft. And they're suddenly attacked by this giant sea lamprey. The Martians have mutated lots of creatures in their experiments. So there's all these kind of nutty, weird creatures and animals, giant rats and what have you. The lamprey attacks Grok. Grok is a clonal man. Basically, the Martians experimented on this guy, turned him into a half-ape creature. He's not articulate. He is kind of like a half-sentient, or barely sentient. We see Hawk, the angry Native American freeman. This guy's kind of consumed by anger. He's on the side of the angels. He's on the good side. But you got to keep your eye on this guy. There's Killraven shooting at the lamprey. And this is Old Skull. He's an older guy, very strong. But he basically has the brain of a 6-year-old. But he's a little sweetie. And there's Mashula. Mashula is Killraven's best friend. They met in the gladiatorial pens in 2010 when they were little kids. And they would fight for the Martians' pleasure. And they escaped. And they started this freedom fighting group to take back Earth. We see pretty soon on that Carmilla Frost, this character, she's not your typical mainstream female character. She's pretty kick-ass. She doesn't just wait for people to rescue her. And she has a very special bond with Grok, which I can't remember what it is, but I think in the next few issues they'll remind us. Because Don McGregor comes from the Stan Lee school of, maybe over-explaining things. But speaking of which, Hawk basically tries to rescue, quote-unquote, Carmilla Frost. And as soon as they land from him swinging and grabbing her, she slugs him and says, if you get back up, I'm going to slug you again. I'm going to knock you down again. So she runs back to help Grok. But Killraven takes care of the sea lamprey. Grok is grievously wounded. It's not looking good for the poor little guy. So now we switch scenes to Chicago. And we see this giant, insane building. It's a citadel called Deathbirth. It's Don McGregor has a weakness for kind of sometimes pretentious titles and character names. And sometimes they're a little over the top. I want to give you an example of Don McGregor's even like I said, he can totally write better than most writers in comics at the time, or who have ever been in comics. He's got a love of language. He knows how to put words together. Sorry about that. But then he always has to add some stupid glib whatever. I don't know. Here's an example. Like I said, Stan Lee's school of writing. He likes to have this conversational atmosphere with the audience. So here's an example. Deathbirth. The title is a contradiction in terms, but nearly all absolutes have rules for their exceptions. Remember I before E, except after C? It's like he's chatting with you. It's like that Stan Lee chattiness, but more of a pretentious freshman college writing student level. And he just has this need to throw shit like that in. And it's a little infuriating because I really like Don McGregor's writing. I know I'm going to criticize him a lot in this video, but I own a lot of Don McGregor comics and I love him. But he also has this tendency that's pretty obnoxious. So death birth is basically holding pens for these for human pairs to basically breed human veal for the Martians. They got a taste for human flesh, and they really like babies. So there's these holding pens. Every couple is named Adam and Eve, and they just give them a different number. So here we see Adam and Eve 3031. And the Martians haven't crushed their, need for affection and love, or capacity to have affection and love. And these guys love each other. But I mean, their lives are like they're like cows in our world. I mean, they're just, it's a miserable life, just waiting to have your baby killed and eaten. And just, you're stuck in this little holding pen your whole life. Then we see, we cut the scene to the Overlord. And he's like a bigwig in the Martian war machine. And he's talking to one of his lieutenants, Scar, with a K. I gotta stop and just say, look at the design of Scar. He literally has a big sphincter in the middle of his face. Forget about Arseface and Preacher. That's a total, his whole face is an anus. Very odd design. And, okay, I'm going to stop thinking about it. I don't want my mind to wander. But, basically Overlord is talking to Scar. I'm sorry, he's the High Overlord. And he is talking about Killraven. In the past, few months, i.e. 10 issues, Killraven has become a huge thorn in the side of the Martians. He's had a few victories. He's been raising a ruckus. He's basically public enemy number one to the Martians. So they're having a little meeting about what to do with this Killraven. How do you solve a problem like Killraven? They're wondering. Look at that. It's disgusting. So the Freemen land at this pier. They get off the ship. And all of a sudden, Hawk senses someone's looking at him in the shadows, and he fires at him. He misses. But then the person comes out. And it's this woman, Volcana Ash. Oh, I'm sorry, Volcana Ash. And Hawk is basically like, we should just kill her, not take a chance. She could be working with the Martians. And Killraven doesn't let him. He says no. And Hawk, I guess, makes a threatening move towards her. And she grabs his wrist, and she burns him. He falls down into a heap, just like in total pain. Meanwhile, while she's doing that, she's totally shamelessly flirting with Killraven, which we'll see. That's her. She's very Mae West-like. Everything she says to Killraven is like innuendo and kind of salacious. There's a face that even Jack Abel couldn't ruin. It looks pretty nice. But you can see the Jack Abel influence. You know what I forgot to mention? This first 2-page spread here. I just wanted to show you again just how much Jack Abel obliterates P. Craig Russell's pencils. I hope you keep watching this video, because very shortly we're going to see the next issue. And it is a world of difference when P. Craig Russell inks himself. This is like, so obviously he didn't get 50 times better in a month. He was already good. He was probably in his late teens, early 20s. Already one of the best cartoonists in mainstream comics. But you wouldn't know it from watching this. And it's so sad. Like Jack Abel, they should have taken his pay away from the next comic he drew. He shits all over this art. But yeah, you can see, I hope you can see this. Just, you wouldn't even know this was P. Craig Russell. Okay, back to Volcano Ash. Man, lots of ads and letter pages in here. And while she's talking to Killraven, all of a sudden he has this like episode where his mind is seeing something that he shouldn't be seeing, something far away. And what he's seeing is Adam and Eve, 3031 in Chicago. And they're like overseer. He's this guy named Atalon. He's basically like the warden of death birth. And he's like totally humiliating them, making Adam lick his boots. And he's basically taunting them like, very soon you'll be ready and your little baby will be fed to the Martians. This is a really interesting thing about the whole Killraven stories is that in this future, a lot of the enemies Killraven fights are human beings, like Quislings. I can imagine if you lived in that world, better to hold the whip than be the one who's whipped. But it's just kind of surprising how many of the humans in this are villains. They just, didn't want to be at the bottom of the pile, so they kind of collaborate with the Martians. But Adelon isn't just trying to save his own skin. He's a fucking full-on sadist. He loves this shit. He loves his job. And he's a real bastard. And then Killraven's vision ends. And it really shakes him. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. They see a Martian walker, the tripods, and it's heading towards them. They realize that Grok can't, run, flee. He's too injured. So the rest of the Freemen make a diversion. And they go into this, I guess they're in Milwaukee now. They run into this old brewery. And the Death Breeders are chasing them. These are the guys who work for the Martians. They're all humans. They wear this kind of silly skeleton outfit. It's very Halloween-y. And they're chasing our Freemen heroes. Killraven throws this one guy into a vat of like decades-old brine. There's still vats of beer there, obviously just disgusting, probably. This is another example with Don McGregor. He had this annoying proclivity for any reference from the time, like pop culture reference. He always threw them in his stories. No matter how serious the situation was, he just throws in these like ridiculous, out-of-date pop culture references. Here's an example. He throws the guy in the beer. And it says, and when it comes to weapons, Killraven does not have to settle for anything less than the best. That's a commercial from when I was a kid for a beer company. It's, this is why I have such a conflicted love of Don McGregor. It's, I definitely fall on the side of liking him, because I do own a lot of his comics and I don't want to sell them. So now they're going to head towards Death Birth. A lot of these issues have little reprints of old Atlas sci-fi comics. This one's called The Strangers. It's run by Herb Hamilton. Never heard of that guy. It's kind of perfunctory, decent, whatever. Helps tell the story. So one day on Earth, these aliens show up. And they look in the window, and they look humanoid. This guy says, yes, they've round heads, just like us. So they're basically going to prepare a friendly landing for them. But all of a sudden, a blinding ray melts this, I think it's a Jeep or something. So all of a sudden, they scramble to their jets. And they're like, okay, the enemy's hot. The aliens are hostile. We got to attack them. The aliens are way too technologically advanced for the humans. They just destroy the jets. Easy peasy. So then all of a sudden, these two robot-looking guys, they're incredibly cute robots, by the way. Look at that. It's like if Ogden Whitney robot or something. And they inform the humans that, oh yeah, we fired on that Jeep because whenever we go to a new planet to make friends, we have to draw their fire in case they were hostile. We need to know, what's the capacity of their weapons. So stupid. I mean, yeah, we're going to meet this other planet and be friends with them. And the first thing we're going to do is like fire on them. But they are friendly. And then all of a sudden the humanoid creatures, the roundheads, if you will, come out of the spaceship. And this human guy says, the masters themselves are here. And the robot informs him, it is natural to assume they are the masters since they look like you. But they are robots. We are the masters. Oh, what a twist. So stupid. And I'm sorry, I know the universe is a huge place, but I just think, I'm sure nature and biology are pretty similar wherever you go. I mean, they're different, very different. I just can't imagine any biological creature being this angular. Bizarre. So let's go to the next issue, number 28. Oops, sorry, I hit the phone. I think that's okay. And look at the difference here, guys. P. Greg Russell, penciling and inking. And this is kind of actually not the best P. Greg Russell. Remember, he's young. It's like every now and then there's, he's batting 99 out of 100. But this is really nice. Okay, here's where it gets just stunning. Look at this, the difference I was telling you about. This is just P. Greg Russell, not only penciling and inking, also coloring. And it's wonderful coloring, too. Every now and then, Marvel would let him color his own stuff. And it was always amazing. Like, he wasn't a colorist, but he was one of the best colorists probably back in that time. Or even way after that time. This one's called The Death Merchants. Oh man, that design work is just so great. And the illustration itself. I like these little like Art Nouveau stars or whatever you call them. I don't know, but it's very graphically appealing. There's another thing Don McGregor liked to do. It was kind of revolutionary. He'd have like typeset blocks of text. Almost like prose. And I think there was a few other guys in the early 70s. It's kind of a pretentious thing, like, oh, look, we're not just comics. We're different than that. Almost like what Byron Price did in the 70s with his graphic novels, where he'd have giant blocks of text and art combined. But luckily, he gets back to normal comic storytelling with balloons and captions. The Freemen are chilling out here near the lake, and Mashula's fishing. And all of a sudden, this giant salmon jumps out. But it looks like some Chinese dragon. And he attacks Mashula. Kind of fucks up his hand. I want to give you an example of, even when Don McGregor's, being a good writer, he's a little purple. So this is Don McGregor's style. I'm trying to convey to you, since I can't read everything. The teeth puncture flesh, blood, bright and red with life, screams its message of vulnerability, and Mashula's pain engulfs the night. It's almost like poetry. So volcano ash obliterates the salmon. And Mashula's okay. She's just a little wounded. Oh my God, look at this. God, that illustration is so good. This is beautiful stuff. So Volcano Ash tells the guys her origin, basically. She had a sister named Melanie. And then, then the Martians came. And their nice childhood was obliterated. Of course, they sent them to death birth. Melanie just became a breeding cow, one of the Eves. But for some reason, they decided to do experiments on volcano ash, pump her with radiation and stuff. And I'm sorry, guys, I just have to interrupt myself. I can't even focus on the story. Look at this, how amazing this is. This is such a great looking page, even though it is that very, Don McGregor doing his prosy stuff. But oh my God, that is so amazing to me. That's just wonderful. Okay, sorry. Let's get back to the story. So it gave her these superpowers. She can burn, she can control the heat of her body. She can get like just white hot. And she can even like throw fire bolts and blow up things, And like we saw her do to Hawk's wrist earlier. So of course, with her new powers, she got the hell out of there. She killed a bunch of the bad guys and escaped. I just want to keep looking at that page for another minute. So now we're back in Chicago. I like this. You don't see this that much anymore. This seemed like in the early 70s, some comic artists would do this. Like if you're doing really cinematic storytelling with like trying to convey that it's just like, oh, we're zooming in. There'd be no panels. I mean, not panel gutters. It would just be a black line. I kind of like the look of it. It also just squeezed more art in, so that's not a bad thing either. We see Adam and Eve, and Adelon's basically saying, time's up, guys. We're going to harvest your baby now. And Adam tries to tries to resist. But he's chained up, and this guy's got guns. He can't do much. But Adelon is so fucking repulsive. He looks like a character from Pink Floyd The Wall or something. Like a Gerald scarf design. Look at that. Ugh. So they grab Eve and take her off. I'm sorry, first they grab Adam and take him off. Then Eve goes to the delivery room, if you will. As they're heading there, he shows her the banquet hall where the Martian overlords chow down on the human veal. Then we have this interlude. We see that, I guess this guy was in the last couple issues. He was a villain, but I don't think not sure if he works for the Martians. There's still room in this world to just be bad and not work for the Martians, because it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic world with no law and order. And Scar finds him. And he says, tell me about Killraven. What do you know about him? I'm looking for him. And the guy's like, I don't know much. I saw his name on a wanted poster. But they're already gone. And so Scar just throws him down. And I guess he kills him. He lands on this tombstone and cracks his skull open. So now we're back in Chicago. Oh, just so nice. You can see so much of P. Craig Russell's affinity for Jim Steranko in his early comics. He really likes Steranko, and it comes through a lot. These pages look so good to me. So they find Adam. First they kill the Death Breeders who were guarding him, and then they find him, and Killraven recognizes him from his vision, where he was licking Adelon's boots. I like this too. P. Craig Russell does coloring very different than most colorists, almost using the color comics printing as a paintbrush. Just this swath of red under this caption, and there's like a swath of green where Killraven's eyes are. Also, because he's the colorist, he can decide, hey, I want some black and white here. I think this looks so good. This whole sequence is just, oh man, just amazing graphic design, amazing illustration. So he realizes they got to get to that delivery room. They're about to take Eve's baby out and eat him or her. So on the way there, they see the Martian banquet hall. And they just massacre these Martians. They just slaughter them. Oh man, look at all this fun stuff. But then he realizes that the visions he's been having, because all of a sudden he feels like he's dying after he kills a Martian. So he has this weird mind link to some certain Martians every now and then. And I imagine we'll find out more about that in the ensuing issues. But it's a big piece of the puzzle. Because he's had some kind of visions before, but some of them were murkier than others because there wasn't a Martian there. He couldn't see through their eyes. Here we got Volcano Ash kicking ass. That's a pretty impressive panel. Look at that. Just so good. More of those no gutter panels. Nice. It's an easy way to compress a lot of story in. So they get to the delivery room, and the guy who's basically the main OGBYN, he's called the Sacrificer. And he's got this like surgical implement grafted to his arm. Such a weird design. Like it's almost like something Graham Ingalls would design. His face with the weird tattered mask on it. Really grotesque. Of course, Adelon's there too. So they're all fighting the Freemen. And Adam and Eve are reunited. That's such beautiful art. We can see P. Greg Russell is just already just a masterful illustrator. He's so young. But just the body, the way she's leaning into him, he's already got it. He's already amazing. So it kind of ends with a happy ending, even though they got a long way to go. They're in the middle of death birth. But Adam and Eve are reunited, so... Of course, Volcano Ash has to say something salacious to Killraven. She's just constantly flirting with him. More of that, from Steranko, the op art stuff that Steranko kind of brought to comics. Oh, man. That's some really nice art. And it's pretty fun writing, even though I know I criticize Don McGregor a lot. I think I criticize him so much because I like him so much. I love the fact that he writes with so much heart, and he really seems to attempt to, and sometimes succeed, in making the characters three-dimensional, at least two-dimensional, compared to your average, Marvel comic at the time. So I really admire, especially at the time, he was really revolutionary, but also he annoys me sometimes. Here we have a story called Escape from Nowhere by Tony DiPreta, another Atlas comic. We see this escape artist, the Great Myron. That doesn't sound that exotic. The Great Stanley. And he's walking across the street one day, and this truck is heading right for him. Of course, he doesn't see it. And then all of a sudden, he's transported to this, shadowy dimension, and he sees these shadowy forms moving somberly through the darkness. And he hears this weird siren while he's there. And all the shadowy figures are galvanized into action. And all of a sudden, they kind of melt away. And Myron wakes up, a split second later. He says, "Where am I? What happened?" And the ambulance is there. And they're like, "You were hit by the truck." The manager says, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay? You're going to be able to do the stunt tomorrow? Your big stunt?" And Myron says, "I have a feeling I've already made my greatest escape today." So he realizes that he was in the land of the dead. And he escaped somehow, even though it's not like he did anything. He just lucked out. But he's quite the escape artist, I guess. Yeah, not a big fan of this Tony DiPretta guy. I don't know about this art. I've seen worse. And then we got the letter pages. And there we go, guys. Our first chapter in our scholarly examination of Don McGregor and P. Craig Russell's War of the Worlds featuring Killraven. Hope you enjoyed it. These comics just like blew me away when I was a teenager. I actually didn't like them when I was a little kid. They were too adult for me. I was like, none of these guys are wearing superhero costumes, and why are they talking about love and stuff? It's boring. Just punch somebody. I don't like it. Because I had an issue with this when I was a little kid, and I definitely didn't really care for it. Of course, I got a little older, started buying them in quarter bins, and just totally completed my collection in a couple of years and was really into them. But like I said, I got rid of the ones that aren't up to snuff. But these are pretty damn nice to have. And just for the P. Craig Russell art alone is just impeccable. But also, it's got one of the best writers in comics at the time. So definitely you should have these. And I hope you find them cheap. I'm sure they're not in quarter bins anymore. So thanks for watching, guys. And hopefully I'll see you next time here at the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.